Hi, I'm Deb Krause, President of Eden Theological Seminary, and I'm here today in a conversation with Reverend Dr. Dietra Baker, who is joining our faculty this fall as visiting professor of contextual education and community engagement. Dr. Baker, welcome, and maybe we could begin with you thinking with us and sharing a bit about how you see this move into full-time teaching at Eden in contextual education as a part of your vocation.
Thanks, Deb. I think the first thing to say is, I've done, it's strange. It's been about 20 years in ministry, and I feel like I've done about every kind of job in ministry. I've had every kind of call in ministry that you can have. But there's a theme to that call that threads right through, my time and formation at Eden Seminary. And so I just think back to when I was a kid, and I just would notice the neighborhood, and I would notice what our neighborhood had and what other neighborhoods had and who lived in what places. And I always had questions about that when I was a little kid. This next step at Eden is another opportunity, another space to help develop and form leaders who put on that lens, who, whether in urban environments or suburban environments, or if they're in the general church, if they're pastors or chaplains, that they are looking for those communities. They're looking for those people. They're looking for who's left out, who's been left behind, who's been forgotten, who's been oppressed, who's been marginalized. And I think that's central to my cause, the call to be a minister of liberation.
That is such a powerful witness, that this capacity to bring a critical lens to situations in life and ministry, to contexts, is a gift that God gave you as a child, and that you've nurtured that gift and moved with it into ministry and into teaching. I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about bringing that critical facility into different contexts of ministry. How do you see that capacity to wonder about situations and to wonder about God's call in those situations for God's people to work in different contexts?
In organizing, we talk about it as the world as it is and the world as it should be. If you're a farmer in a rural community, if you're a suburban mom trying to find your way to God's call, or if you're in the city where cities have been ravaged either by gentrification or by political forces of ignorance that have blighted communities, all have an imagination of the world as it should be. And I think, as I engage with students at Eden, that's the journey that we'll be on. We'll be on the journey to notice the world as it is, sort of me as that little kid, to invite us into those experiences, to see what's there, who's there, what are the cares, what are the hopes, what are the dreams of the people, what are their stories, what are their lives, what is God up to in the world as it is, and then to spark their creativity, their theological imagination, their heart for praxis, not just to kind of talk and not just to think, but then how do we, in different contexts, whether it's a hospital or the chaplaincy, or if it's in prison ministry, or if it's as a pastor, then how do we bring hope and imagination for the world as it is into being?
Dietra, I'm certain that anyone who is listening to this conversation is on the edge of their seat to see what is going to emerge from Eden Seminary's contextual education program, what it means for the students who will learn within it, and what it means for the supervisors and congregations and organizations that will engage with them and be in ministry together. And as a way of kind of closing out this conversation, I'd love to hear you reflect on your vocation as an organizer and how you see that work connecting with the network of congregations and organizations that comprise Eden's contextual education settings. How do you see them being connected in a common work? And how do you see your leadership and teaching within that?
Yeah, Eden has so many great relationships, like you said, that have been developed over the years. And I don't know that, you know, all of those places would recognize themselves to be a part of the progressive Christian movement, and yet they are, and yet that movement is needed in the St. Louis area, and people are calling for, even now in the streets, for there to be a moral imagination about how we care for each other and how we're in relationship with each other. And so I think, you know, all of these relationships, there's the opportunity really to build real power, honestly. If, you know, if power is in some ways demonstrated by our ability to organize people, then, you know, there's a lot of people to be organized in this network that can be brought to bear with other movement, alongside other movement work that is happening in our community, that can amplify and strengthen the infrastructure of the movement that has been happening in St. Louis for a while. So I'm excited and to see the ways and to play with the ways that network can amplify and build the power that's happening in St. Louis. So excited to introduce and invite and encourage and strengthen that work at Eden.